Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am an adrenal fatigue recovery expert, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of your Adrenal Fix. Today I wanted to talk to you about genetics and the relationship that has to do with adrenal fatigue. I consult with a lot of patients that are fatigued, that have no energy, have lost their bounce, they can't accomplish their daily tasks, they can't sleep, they crash in the middle of the day, they crave salts or they crave sweets, or they eat food and then they get irritable, shaky, lightheaded if meals are missed, and they're just not living the life that they deserve. These are people that are suffering with adrenal gland problems. And so what we want to talk about is there any relationship to the genetics? So I consult with patients that have autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's or psoriatic arthritis or psoriasis, lupus, Crohn's, celiac, IBS, progressive neurological disorders. And when I ask them about their past medical history and their family history, they'll tell me, yeah, you know, my father or my mother or an aunt or a cousin or a niece and nephew, they had some kind of autoimmune concern, or they may have had some kind of condition that I have. In 2003, the Human Genome Project, which matched the entire genetic code for us, we determined that there are polymorphisms or mutations that we inherit from our mother or from our father or both that don't allow us to convert energy properly. And so the example I always use is, imagine having a slot machine and putting quarters or $1 in the token machine, and you should have 4 quarters that come out. And then those 4 quarters are being used by the slot machine to roll the slot and then play the game. The analogy is such that when we eat food, we should be able to convert it down into its substrates or its constituents. And if we can't convert them down properly, then we are only maybe making 3 quarters of the entire 4 quarters that we should be able to do. So then when we don't make the right amount of substrates or nutrients, then obviously we're not going to be able to roll the slot machine. And what are the slot machine in the body is over 250 different cellular processes. How does that relate to adrenal glands, you ask? Good question. Adrenal glands their main job is to settle inflammation. So if you have a chronic infection in your gut, if you have a food sensitivity, if you have a heavy metal toxicity, if you have mold exposures or environmental toxins, which we'll talk about because that's a huge thing that's going on in today's day and age. If you have all these things going on, then your adrenal glands need to settle inflammation. However, if you also have a genetic predisposition for not settling inflammation very well, then the next thing you know is you're not getting rid of your infection, or you're not getting rid of your parasites, or you're not getting rid of the detoxification as well as the person that doesn't have these genetic predispositions. So what I would suggest to you is, number one, go to something called 23andme.com. It's 23andme.com. It's a way where you can have your saliva samples tested. I know a lot of people don't want to do that because they feel the conspiracy theory and they don't want the government to know all about their information, and I can understand that. But if you're looking to recover from a chronic condition, then you need to look outside the box. You need to realize that your genetics are not a predetermined destiny for you to suffer with adrenal fatigue, but they are certainly contributing to your lack of clearing infections, your lack of detoxifying, your lack of producing neurotransmitters, your lack of producing antioxidants, your lack of regenerating DNA for cellular activity and cellular growth. Those are really, really important things. So going to 23andme.com will determine your genetic predispositions or your mutations or your polymorphisms. Now, it's not going to show you that when you get that test ordered. Basically what it's going to do is it's going to give you the raw data. And then that raw data has to be exported and then put into a program to determine what your genetic polymorphisms are. Once I get this information, then or a doctor who can interpret your genetic information properly can tell you, okay, look how we're not methylating, or look how we're not recycling B12, or look how we're not able to make methionine, or look how we're not able to make CBS, or we're increasing our biopterin pathway. These are all fancy terms to say you're just basically not making energy properly. And in order for you to get rid of that infection so that you can help your adrenal glands so they don't have to spend all their time settling down that inflammation, it's not just a matter of taking adaptogens or taking all these adrenal tonics. You need to get to the heart of the matter. And part of the heart of the matter is addressing the genetic problem. So what would you do with the information? Well, number one, you would look at the cycle in the pathway of the biochemistry and you say, hey, this is a cofactor, or this is a cellular activity that we can bypass that and give you support nutritionally for that. And that's really a science, and that comes down to understanding that. The other thing I would say is that just because you have a polymorphism or a mutation doesn't mean you're destined to be able to not get better. And the example I use is, imagine an assembly line, and a polymorphism would be someone who's missing from the assembly line so it doesn't happen properly. But don't forget there's also oxidative stress. And what does that mean? That means you may not even have any polymorphisms or mutations, but you have so much oxidative stress. You have a bad diet, you have a lot of refined sugars and corn starches and modified foods and hybrid foods and GMOs, or you may have an amalgam dental mercury in your mouth, or you may have also blood sugar destabilization issues, or you may have anemic tendencies or parasites. All of that stuff is the analogous to, imagine me being at my workstation on the assembly line. I'm there, there's no mutation, so there's not an enzyme that's deficient. But my power cord isn't plugging into the wall because the power source is out. So that's going to be just as detrimental as someone that has these mutations. So I know it's a lot of confusing stuff we're talking about today, but what I really want you to understand is the fact that your genetics do play a part in your ability to settle inflammation down, which ultimately impacts your adrenal glands. But also what takes a part is all the environmental toxins that don't allow you to efficiently clear inflammation as well. So hopefully you got some good tips out of this. The one thing I would say is check out 23andme.com to learn how you can get your own genetic testing done. The other thing is to evaluate your own environmental toxins and exposures and heavy metals and mercuries and leads and aluminums. You can do that through hair samples and urine samples. So there's a lot of things you can do. But suffice to say is your goal to recover from your adrenal fatigue nightmare is to really look at the cause of the problem, figure out what it is, and then address that. Address it, remove it, stabilize it, or minimize it, and start living the life that you want to live. So hopefully you found this informative. What I want you to do is, if you can look under this link here to go to my site, Adrenal Fatigue Society, to get more information, or you can also just give a thumbs up, a comment, or a like and on this particular video. And I look forward to helping you in your recovery of your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Thank you so much.